Hey, welcome everyone to our series, Everything You Want to Know About the Silva Method. You're here with me, Ken Coscia, Silva's lead instructor and training director, and Amy Schneider, who teaches in Atlanta and Northwestern North Carolina. Today we have a special treat for you. Way back when, in Mr. Silva, José Silva, that is research, there was a defining moment that led to a concept we call the counselors and the laboratory. We want to do a deep dive into some of the key aspects. I'm saying that because there's a lot of diluted information and misinformation out there, and Amy and I are on a mission to make sure you get it correct so that you can prosper, utilize them effectively, and neither of us are into myths or superstitions. Some of them you may enjoy them, but just as an example, there's a fairly famous podcast, and she was referring to the Mind Valley Ultramind program as the complete course. Excuse me, it's only 12 hours or so of pre-recorded videos. Yeah, lots of, but it's not the course. The course is 4 days, 4 full days, 40 hours of training. And the way Jose created it was for in-person, or nowadays, okay, virtually comes close, but with an instructor guiding you step by step. No videos, no recording, you're going through each step. So we're here to help you guys. Listen closely. Let's take a look at the counselors and how this happened. And then Amy is going to jump in with info and ideas. This is definitely an advanced concept. It's not completely unique to the Silva Method, because if you go back thousands of years, philosophers, ancient schools, wisdom schools, they're called, some of the metaphysical approaches that have been around much longer than the Silva Method, any of us watching this, there's always been this concept that we're not alone in the universe, that somehow, some way, we can access information to guide us. I will leave it to you to make your own conclusion what's going on. But it's so cool. I think it's awesome because it's out of the box thinking. It's a way to access, for sure, intuitive insight. This is in the 1950s. Mr. Silva started in 1944, and it's a long story, but I'm going to cut to the chase here. At one point, he became aware of healers in Mexico who were active. He went to research. He was curious. He never heard of such a thing. And he found some of them to be questionable. And he found some that, as far as he could tell, something was going on. There was like the real deal. And that impressed him. And again, he always had this act of love, wanting to serve, thinking, if we could actually, as fellow human beings, somehow, some way, energetically transfer energy, somehow, some way, project a healing force. I'm talking now conceptually. Think about it. Wouldn't that be great? If you could do this, is something very prevalent, I know, in Amy's family mind, in helping each other. That's what was driving him. So he started applying it, practicing from modeling them, and he was getting results. And he started doing more research, more study. And then he said, what about, the children? Could they do this? Remember, he started with his own children and the neighborhood children. By now, he found that he could help them accelerate learning. They were learning faster, easier when they would shift their conscious awareness into the alpha and theta state, which has become known as an accelerated learning state of mind. So now he's building on it. So Isabelle, of the 10 children, Isabelle and Margie were the research subjects. They're the eldest. All the others were really not a part of the research, frankly. But so a lot of the stories about Isabelle. So he had her enter her alpha state, and he'd have her think of somebody she never met before, or it could be a family member. And she'd imagine on her mental screen, so to speak, this person, and she'd say a prayer. She'd imagine a white light. She'd imagine like a Harry Potter type wand, just something that metaphorically was a symbolic representation of an energy transfer. And sometimes it seemed like it was working. It's hard to always verify. And sometimes you couldn't tell. So he was just researching, taking notes, looking for evidence to support his theory. One day, Isabelle, as she's sitting at her level, became visibly uncomfortable. And Jose would tap her on the shoulder, "You okay?" And she said, "No, that lady, she's got big green eyes. She's going to get me." He said, "What? Honey, it's okay. I'm right here with you." And he tapped her on the shoulder. "I'm in here." No matter what he said, he couldn't reassure her. He thought pretty quickly he was intelligent enough to figure she's having a bad dream. She must have gone off into a dream state, like a nightmare. Very common for every human being occasionally, and especially young children before puberty up to the age of 7. Their imaginary playmates are very real to them. It's a state because they're predominantly in alpha and theta. Brainwave, their brain has not fully developed, we now know, until the early 30s. However, so he was quick to say, "I'm right here." No. So he thought, he remember this goes back, way back, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, "Nothing to fear but fear it yourself." So he took her arm and he said, "Honey, if you make a fist and point," and he did it for her, "and keep pointing at her and keep pointing, she'll get smaller until she disappears." Eventually, she started loosening up and a little smile emerged. And he let go and she got really relaxed. He said, "Is it working?" "Yes, Dad. Yes." She's so small. She's in my hand. Good job. By the way, I've done this with my children. I've done this with my grandchildren. It works. You're teaching them to control their thoughts. You can control your thoughts. You can control your dreams, your imagination, especially when it's out of control. And that's what he's thinking he's doing. And she got comfortable, relaxed. She took control. Jose, always the thinker, said, "I'm not always going to be with you, honey." He would talk like an adult. Amy and I are talking. I know I'm doing all the talking, but Amy's going to jump in. That's fine. He's taking notes mentally to fill in that. And he said, "I'm not always going to be with you. What if I were on your shoulder, so to speak? If you imagine me always standing by your side?" She said, "I love." And she literally got up and went to a blackboard he had in the room, and she drew a little figure, nothing fancy, stick figure. And she started describing a male, and it wasn't Jose. Nobody he knew, nobody he ever heard of, nobody she knew, and she only got a first name, Tomas or Tom. Jose used to say, "Oh boy." But he's watching closely, concerned. What happened though, they were doing experiments where he would have them go to level, use their intuition to guess oil wells, finds, how deep they're drilling into the ground by such and such a date in the future, how many barrels per day. And sometimes they were phenomenally accurate and sometimes they were way off. But now with Tom's guidance, Isabel's accuracy was improving noticeably. And that for him was feedback. It's a good thing. And she knew this was her imagination. It's hard to put into words. But for her, he became real and dynamic. So much so that if another time she felt like she got stuck and he said, "You okay?" She said, "Yeah, I'm fine, but I don't know how to help this person." I remember once Jose told me that Jose was my mentor. I traveled around. I followed him all the time, learning. He was there in the instructor training. He guided us. And so he said to her, "What about Tom?" She said, "Yeah, I know, but Tom's not here." "Tom's not here? What do you mean he's not here?" She said, "I told him to leave the room because this is a female problem." She was working on what we call medical, well, health cases, physical health. And she was embarrassed because there was a female in the female organs. Can you imagine 8-year-old being embarrassed like that? So Jose said, "Okay, what about imagining mom is with you? Paula." She said, "Great idea, Dad, thanks." Again, she went to the board, but didn't draw mom. She described this woman he didn't know, never heard of, and her name is, first name only, Maria. Or Mary, we'll say, English translation of it. And the two of them guided her, and her accuracy climbed through the roof. I'll spare you details, but he was taking notes, researching, and her confidence levels soared. She was like so much so that you're familiar with the term medical intuition? Back then, it didn't exist, that term. She was doing what you would call medical intuition. At the ripe age of 8, she was coming up with, as if she were a physician. I know it's hard to believe if you've never heard this, but information spot on, the fancy schmancy medical term, the symptoms, what was wrong, the location. No way a kid with so little education would have this knowledge and these terms. And often she said, Tom told her. And really, it's knocked your socks off. But remember, I'm a father, 3 children, 3 grand. If I didn't know better, I'd be, now I do because I'm into this. So he's concerned. He said, Isabel, help me out. Ask Tom, what does he think of my idea of creating him? She said, okay, sure. What's so funny? Tom wants to know what makes you think it was your idea in the first place. Really? 3 days later, Jose Silva, in a dream, met his male counselor in a dream. And it's female, but I never learned who the female was. And they've been with us ever since with respect to that. It was a defining moment. It's a distinction, the Silva Method, because our program is very structured. It's structured in such a way for you to harness your human capabilities, for you to attune, as some call it, the field, and to access information in a way, I know I like to do that, the field. Although I joke about it, but now astrophysicists and others creating groundwork research about energy that it's not such a far-fetched thing that somehow, some way we can access information hard to put into words. And that's undeniable. Call it what you will. Let me stop there because I'll just go on, Amy. How about you?
Oh my goodness. I love that story. I've heard it a lot, but it's my favorite. The counselors and the laboratory technique are my favorite technique. It's my go-to technique since I was 9. And I still have vivid memories of where I was in the children's class that my mom first put me through when I went through Silva for the first time, vivid memories of what I was doing using the laboratory and counselors. For me at that age, what was so wonderful about it was, hey, I can have a place of my own. As kids, there's not a ton of things that they really are in control in terms of their environment. And for me, it was like, this is my own thing. It's no one else's because it's my own mind. And this is my space. These are my counselors. And because the laboratory and counselors are a creative technique to help ourselves, help others, it was a way for me to have that aha moment of, oh my goodness, I can send love and healing energy to my grandfather at the time, who was alive then and was going through some challenges. And just having the ability to say, if I can send love and healing to him in this way, maybe I can help. Because at 9, looking at an adult with adult challenges, health challenges, it's like, how am I going to help? I'm just 9. And so it really offered a way to just be able to do anything really and help in any way and help solve any problem. And the counselors, what I love about the counselors are that they help you look at things from different angles. So, in working through our challenges, our projects, they allow us to put ourselves in someone else's shoes and look at things from different points of view and different perspectives. And as we continue to do that and continue to mentally do that, we are helping with our mental flexibility to be open to different possibilities, different solutions. And that, again, this is one of my favorite techniques. I tell you, there's something going on. Man,
And in a sense, who cares what's going on? We understand, even if it was just our imagination. However, that's brilliant, Amy. So cool what you're saying. I remember some of that, and now with you and your family, your three children.
yeah.
Originally, the counselors came to help Isabelle be comfortable, to be at peace, to overcome this fear that was emerging in this experience. And it did the trick. But then as time went along, it evolved into a tool to facilitate, as Amy was saying, the flow of information and to access different perspectives. For example, one way I've always looked at it for me personally is I'm getting better and better. We believe you're whole and complete and you have everything you need. However, I do this in mastery, I do this in the immersion. By the way, those of you who are students of Silva, if you read any of the books, is we used to call it the basic lecture series. We rebranded in 2007, upgraded, and it's become known as Silva Life and Intuition System. It is basically the same program. It's based on Jose's research, but it's got about 40% advanced material that only used to be in the advanced courses that Jose would present to us and then present to me. He asked me to travel the world with this because we were expanding with that. So when you look at the council and this flow, let's briefly give you some ideas. If you could sit down and have a conversation with somebody, who would you sit with? We all know how important it is to have a mentor, somebody who's been there, done that, and can guide us. For example, I serve as the mentor to instructors for a long time, for better than 35 years, since 1984, not because I'm any better, but because I have more experience and I know the history better than anyone, frankly, with respect to that. And I'm able to guide them so that they're accurately portraying who we are, what we're doing, and why we do. And unfortunately, there are some people out there who don't have the training. Ask them, what is your training? Where did you learn to become an instructor? Where did you get your certification? Was it an official certification, which is anywhere from 8 to 10 days? Please be aware of that, because this is what we've observed. There's misinformation there that we're going to look at. So on one hand, it's a modeling exercise where you're modeling excellence. We become just like the people we spend our time with. And what we're doing is our specialty in the Silva Method is to awaken and educate the subjective faculties of mind, the nonverbal communications, the intuition, the inner wisdom. That's what subjective means. In the early days, we used to call it spiritual. It just means non-physical. It's as much a part of us as logic, reasoning, and rational mind, our specialty. And by the way, we're not doctors. So when Amy says healing, we mean spiritual healing. We mean always at a distance, distant healing, remote healing, all sorts of new buzzwords. Yes, I'm a believer. Is it 100%? No. But are there results? In my own family, there have been so many, I think, results enough to encourage me. It can't hurt. And I think, indeed, we are helping. So we're doing this subjectively in our imagination. If I wanted to be a painter like Van Gogh, what if Van Gogh is with me in my imagination while I'm at the canvas guiding me? If I wanted to be a better inventor or business person or better lover, relationship, more people I know, biographies. This is why people read biographies, guys, because we learn by the information we put into our computer, so to speak. Very important. And what Silva came up with, what it's evolved into, is a way to do that subjectively, because you're limited physically what you can do. But in the quantum field, there's no limits. It's called non-locality for that reason. You could imagine anyone, anything. For some people, they may be spiritual guides. For some, who am I to say yes or no? And they're human beings. Human beings. I heard a very well-known personal development company and leader who I know personally, who used to work with us, no names mentioned, you can figure it out, talk about animals. That may, in some people's experience, because that's what they want, God bless them. That's not how it is taught. That is not Jose's intention with that. That's a whole different thing. Yes, there's something about animal symbology and some of the Native Americans and indigenous cultures. I understand. That's not where Jose was coming from. Some think of them as angels guiding us. I was raised a Roman Catholic, and I was always told by the nuns, Dominican nuns educated me for 8 years, that my angels were sitting on my shoulders guiding me. Could be, right? It could also be a metaphor from the subconscious with a message. It's uncanny to me how people sometimes get as a counselor, male or female, in their imagination, their ex, spouse, and they're angry, they're upset. The message is clearly you're hanging on to too much anger and you're not going to be at peace. You're not going to find peace or harmony in your life until you make peace with that. You're not condoning, you're not accepting the atrocity, but you're at a human level recognizing they just did the best they could do. And it's a whole nother topic, forgiveness. Very powerful. People gaining insights, leading to inventions and so on. For some, it's just a metaphor, big message that we're not alone in the universe and that we can somehow, some way access information. How about you? Want to add anything to that, Amy? Have I sparked any thoughts in that
Yeah,
brain?
this idea, it's so cool how the counselors happened spontaneously and as a way to help Isabelle just not be afraid. And if you look back at history, there are so many well-known people, Carnegie and others, who actually had these imaginary board members that they would consult and actually then solve business problems. So it that's been around for a while. So it's so wonderful. That's the very essence of thinking about this in the field, right? We have access to this information. I do have a question for you, though. This question comes up quite a bit in my classes. I know other instructors' classes too. Is okay, once we have our counselors, do we ever change them?
You read my mind because I was going to bring that up because I get that question too occasionally. People always, especially people who took Silva 50 years ago, 40 years ago, and now they're reviewing. As a reviewer, you come back for the rest of your life, you pay a small seat charge. I don't know anybody who does that in organizations. Before we do, I just want to complete a thought. Thank you, Amy. Help me. Even though we're whole and complete and we have access to info, it's often much easier to think of, you're a genius, not me. You're smarter than me. It's much easier to give other people credit. And that's part of what happens, I notice in the class, that when people play the game, let's call it a game, and they've got this male and female, infinitely wise people, it's easier to imagine that than for me to directly say, I got it, baby. And I'm also thinking our listeners for that, there's a lot to it. We could go on, we won't. But this idea, this is really important because I heard some instructors from the digital team. I don't mind, I'm calling them out on it because they call themselves certified instructors, but they lack training. And I'm being transparent. And regardless of who watches this for that, it deeply concerns me because almost 55 years doing this, it's a work of art. It's incredible. It is a blessing and an honor and a privilege for me, and I think Amy, to teach this, to facilitate this, and to be responsible for others. It's one of those things beyond my control. Historically, if you've read Silva's book, this was written in 1973. Most of them are written in the 70s. A lot's changed. Originally, because what happened to Isabelle, it was very spontaneous. It wasn't planned. Jose perceived a need. She didn't fear. That's what sparked it. So he thought, create me, his dad. But instead, she, in a very spontaneous way, this dude, Tom or Tomas, appeared. And in the early days, I started in 1971, one of the original instructors for that. Most of my mentors and peers are all gone. That's how we did present it. We'd say, okay, 1, 2, 3, allow your mail. The compartment door is opening, and little by little, we're exposing in your imagination, looking for an intuitive, because intuition is spontaneous. But for a lot of people, that wasn't happening, and it was very frustrating. And we got lots of questions and lots of people intimidated by the exercise and upset. And this went on, I don't remember the exact timeline, but it was probably at least 10 years. Even in the manual, it needs to be changed, the template. I help create the new manuals, but it's still in there. Do not change. So clarify. And this was okayed by Jose. If you have a spontaneous experience, so I'm thinking I want to have Mary Smith as my female counselor, but Roberta shows up as my female, trust that. If you have what seems like an intuitive, spontaneous, trust that because it's truer to coming from your heart, from your inner wisdom. Whereas I'm biased because I really admire this woman. I really admire this guy and I want them, which is not a bad thing. We can learn from that. That's the essence of it. Trust the spontaneity and not change it because people, I've had this happen with women. They tell me this horror. They got their ex-husband and they're ready to punch me out because they're blaming me. They're out of control. That's what people do when they're in anger like that. And when they finally, months later, I succeeded in getting them to let go of that and forgive the dude, he disappeared and she got who she wanted as a male counselor. Fascinating to me. It's almost like our inner consciousness is saying, if you want to move on and make progress in your life and have a more fulfilling life and be at peace, you need to take care of unfinished business. It's a loose end, spiritually speaking. It's not just my opinion, that's my experience, but it's also good, sound psychology. We need to be clear of stuff. Anger just produces more anger. It's not healthy for your brain. That's where that's coming from. However, if somebody was really uncomfortable, then change it. You have full control. You can accept or reject. That's the bottom line, my friends. Your comfort and understand where you're coming from. So it's okay if something shifts within you and you have a different perspective. What Amy said was beautiful, and you're seeing things differently. You may have a whole different worldview because your activating system is always changing, shifting. The filters are focusing differently based on your life's experience, based on your beliefs. So it's okay. Just trust your intuition with that. How's that for an answer?
I love it. I love it.
And that,
You mentioned a little bit ago about how it can be easier to look at someone and recognize all of their wonderful qualities and what they have. We have access to genius mentality. We're all there. We're all of us by using more of our minds and using them in a creative manner. And all of these tools really help us do that. But back to what you were saying about really it being easier to look at someone else and really appreciate them more than sometimes, hey, these are all of the good qualities about me and what I offer the world, right? When we look at someone else and appreciate their wonderful qualities and what they offer, what's so lovely is it's a boomerang effect. It's like we're looking in the mirror and we are able to start really appreciating who we are and having more uplifted emotions in that area. And it's also easier to help someone else with maybe the same problem that we have than it is sometimes to help ourselves. So the counselors are just this wonderful, dynamic, just catch all of the things that can really help us when we are in the subjective.
and that will be our next topic, next week's conversation that we'll have, and everything you want to know about the Silva Method, case working. And then just want to add a qualifying statement, please. What Amy was saying, we don't mean you're better than anyone. You're better than you were before. when you have more skills, more knowledge. We do subscribe to the premise that has been taught throughout the ages that we are whole and complete, and you are far more than you appear to be. And when you come through the class with Amy, myself, or one of our fantastic instructors here in the United States, or anywhere in the world for that matter, you will feel that way. You will have a whole different viewpoint of yourself because you will access who you are, your true self, and you'll leave with the tools to harness that ability. That's all we're saying. So we're using that term genius somewhat metaphorically.
Metaphorically.
You have
Yeah.
access to information to guide you more than you realize. If you're finding this helpful, please share it with others. Share this video with other people. People need to hear this. We got a lot of work to do. And one of the things that excites me about the counselors and laboratory is it's an opportunity for us to solve problems, to get information that truly helps us. Because if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting the same results. If you keep doing what you've been doing, you're stuck in a pattern, you're going to keep getting the same results. Now, if you like the results and it's working, yes. However, right, there's always more to learn and there's always more to grow. But a lot of times people, because the misery of familiarity, the misery while we're in familiar suffering is far more comfortable than the misery of uncertainty. In order to change, we've got to do something different, and change is stressful. And that's why people get stuck. Understand that as you grow. And this is an opportunity for us to slowly but surely, we're thinking out of the box. This is why we do what we do, because we want to leave this world better than when we started. We want to help others live a more fruitful, more productive life, because frankly, as you change and become a little healthier, a little bit nicer, a little bit calmer, a little bit more human, that's what you bring to the game. That's what you bring in your interactions with people. And watch it. You be the judge. I hear this all the time from the hundreds of thousands of people I've guided through this. People have accused me of being on drugs. They say, how come? You're so much nicer. You're calmer. You're more at ease. And you know what? You're not going to trigger people. There are people who bring out your best because of the way they see you, the way they think of you. It's time for us to up our game. The world needs you. The world needs us to up our game with that. So my friends, look forward to seeing you. I hope you got really good value. And if you did, share it with others. I want to thank Amy. This is actually Amy's idea. And Amy and I become accountability partners to each other. I want to really salute you, Amy, because she came up with this idea because there's a lot of misinformation out there. She said, we got to do something. And we came up with the name. Everything you want to know about the Silva Method accurately, as close to the horse's mouth as possible.
Absolutely. It's super fun. I love doing this, and it has hopefully so much value to you guys out there who are watching this. And if you have a question that we haven't answered yet, or it sparks other questions, please let us know. We'd be happy to answer it for you. And we look forward to doing this again and having another video. I hope it's been super helpful.
Yes, and leave it in the comments. Thank you for remembering that. We're here. You can count on us. So I am going to sign off. Everybody, take care, and may the best of your life be the rest of your life.